Merit do?
What does he do?
Yeah.
He's a child psychiatrist.
Okay, here we are again. Sorry, we couldn't meet last week. We had this really, I have to say, it was an incredible levaya here in the shul. And if you have the opportunity, if you were not here to watch it, it's on our channel. Really an unbelievable tribute from children and grandchildren for Lucy Pantera. Zichrono Livracha Shalom. Shiva just concluded yesterday. And I wanted to dedicate our learning today because they got it from Shiva yesterday, but to Hindalea Bas Arya Leib, Holocaust survivor and matriarch of incredible family, and to whom we owe a tremendous amount, not only here in Eitz Chaim, but really in the entire Jewish community here and in Israel. So really something. This time when we started our introduction, we didn't even scratch the surface of a single word of a single pasuk in Sefer Yehoshua, because we have to have introduction. Introductions are meant to be lengthy, right? Unless you're introducing the speaker. When you introduce the guest speaker and the introduction is longer than the speaker itself, oh, you get fault. Imagine if you're the speaker. So we looked at sort of the why Yehoshua stands where it does, because the book of Sefer Devarim ends not at the end. The Jewish people have not yet left the desert. They have not yet entered into the land of Israel, and all of a sudden it ends. Moshe dies. What happens? So now we built this platform where Yehoshua seamlessly takes over, and that's the main theme of the introduction, was that we have this seamless transition from one leader to the next, from one generation to the next, or from one stage to the next, of Midbar to Egypt. I'm sorry, Midbar to the land of Israel. Yeah, Egypt would be wrong. That's kind of going the wrong way. Okay, so let's just look at some of the first few pesukim. And again, I would recommend, if anybody hasn't seen this Art Scroll edition of the Reuben edition of the prophets. This is one volume. It's Yehoshua and Shoftim. Has the four main mefarshim: the Rashi, Radak, Mitzudas Dav, and Mitzudas Tzion, which you would find in like classic. One that Miriam has is the classic sort of school. That's the school version one. And then the other is and it has it in English, and it has a lot of the interpretations in English as well. So this is a really well done. It came out in the last couple of years. I think really well done. So now let's just take a crack at some of the pesukim. And again, we take sort of this holistic approach. We don't look at one verse at a time and parse every word, although we will look carefully at certain words. But I want you to get sort of a feeling for just kind of how this flows. So before we get into depth, let's just read through some of the pesukim, and then we'll see how this goes. So Vayi acharei Moshe Eved Hashem, Vayomer Hashem LeYehoshua ben Nun Misharis Moshe Lemor. So this dovetails perfectly with what we saw last time, is that right after Moshe died, which that sentence in and of itself is kind of very sad, after the death of Moshe, and Moshe, he's called what? If you had to write one thing on your tombstone, here we go again. Okay, you ever have that exam, that assignment in school, like write your own eulogy?
Yes, I didn't do it.
Because you're going to live forever.
I just didn't want to do it.
You didn't want to do it. So maybe you need to sit in the chair, not me.
I know.
You don't want to be eulogized?
It wasn't about eulogy. It was like filling out your death certificate.
It's hard.
I didn't do it. It wasn't hard.
It gives one pause. Right. It's not hard if you don't do it. I do this pretty much like every other day. But if you had to write, so Moshe Rabbeinu, would we know where his tombstone is? And by the way, it's a very hard thing to write on a gravestone. You're limited in space. They charge per letter, but all those things. But how do you, what do you write? So on Moshe's, it says Eved Hashem. That's what it says in the end of Devarim. That's what it says here. Eved Hashem. So if someone to be known as Eved Hashem, might sign up for that. That's pretty good. Servant of God, I'll take it. Okay. And then Hashem says to Yehoshua, bin Nun, which we discussed last time, bin. And again here, Mishares Moshe Lemor. He is known as not the leader of Israel. He's known as Mishares Moshe. And he says as follows, Moshe Avdi Meis, V'atakum avoras Yarden azeh atavachol mazeh al aretz asher nechinus elahem livnei Yisrael. So not only is the author, by the way, the book authored by Yehoshua, the author calls Moshe Eved Hashem, but God calls him Eved Hashem. That's my high praise. Moshe Avdi. My Eved Moshe, my Moshe. So we kind of have this feeling throughout the book of Bamidbar from Parshas Chukas and on that God kind of has it in for Moshe. And it's one of those just unfair. We discussed it last time. It's kind of like unfair episode or entire occurrence in the entire Tanakh probably is that Moshe doesn't get to go into the land of Israel. And every time Eretz Yisrael is mentioned, Hashem mentions it to Moshe, Hashem always says, oh, by the way, because you didn't sanctify my name with the water. In case you were wondering, Moshe, why? Like, you ever someone that constantly reminds you of like why you're in trouble or why you did something wrong or why you're in a certain state? Oh, and by the way, and you remember why? Oh, yeah, because and because you forgot the keys at home. That's why, we're walking today, like whatever it is. Here, but Hashem, no, Moshe Avdi, he's my Eved.
Yeah, but isn't it also interesting that he says that Moshe died, like as if he had nothing to do with it?
Yeah. Well, he didn't kill him, did he? I mean,
No, but
what should he say?
I don't know. I just like when my kids break something, it broke.
Well, it depends. It depends.
Like-
It depends if it's my son breaks a window, then it's usually your son broke the window is what I get.
No, from your son though.
Right. My daughter got an A. Your son broke the window. That's how it works. But yeah, but I think so. I think it's giving a very sort of like real relationship, almost showing God has a loss, right? Hashem, I also had a loss. I couldn't help but saying it's so many times during the past week. Mrs. Pantera had these incredible caregivers, and they were broken. Like 10 years they spent with her, and they took such immaculate care of her. And it was like they were sitting Shiva too. When we went outside, we took the walk outside. They came with us. They also did the walk outside, because you can't mitigate the loss. It's a real loss. So Hashem has a loss, and He says, "Okay, now vatakum. What do you do when you lose something? When the leader's lost?" He tells them very straightforward, "Kum, you got to get up." In other words, there's no time for wallowing. There's a time for mourning, and this is why Halacha tells us that there's a warning against people who mourn too much. And I've seen this, and rabbis have to know kind of, when somebody's not dealing very well with mourning, when somebody might need help. And I've seen this, and usually the people who fall into that category, they don't want to get help, and they just kind of like they're content or almost happy being miserable. There are certain people in shul life like that also, by the way, who are only happy when they're miserable, like they're only happy when they're upset about something. But the notion of get up and go, kum avoras here, to go get up and cross the Jordan, you and all the nation to the land that I am going to give to them, to Bnei Yisrael. Kol makom asher tidroch kaf raglachem bo lachem nisativ kasher dibarti el Moshe. Every place, wherever you're going to tread, I have given it to you. Just like I spoke to Moshe. Again, the seamless transition. Everything that you have is because I said it to Moshe, and you're just sort of his mamalei makom. We call it mamala makom. Is that you're filling his place. No one's ever going to mistake Yehoshua for Moshe. No one is ever going to think Yehoshua is Moshe, but everybody's going to believe that Yehoshua is fitting to take the place of Moshe, certainly in this next stage of the Jewish history. And he gives them the parameters. Mehamidbar v'halavanon hazev nahar gadol nahar paras kol eretz hachitim v'ariyam gadol mevo hashemesh yehigvulchem, that all of, from the desert, from Lebanon, from the Great Sea to the Euphrates, all the land of the Chitim until the Yam Gadol Mevo Hashemesh Yehegvulchem. Right. So if you want to, we'll get to it. We'll get to the maps at some point. At some point, we'll get to the maps. But if I read the ArtScroll translation, the desert and this Lebanon until the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Hittites, the Great Sea toward the setting of the sun will be your boundary. Okay. Now, we're going from the Mediterranean all the way to the Euphrates. Okay, anybody know where the Euphrates River is?
Iraq.
It's in Iraq. Okay, so I don't know. There are different versions on different periods of Jewish history where there were different conquerings about exactly what the boundaries of Israel were. in this past Shabbos, we actually, in our in-depth shiur, we looked at what's called king and chazaka in the land of Israel, how one acquires the land of Israel, because, you could easily ask, wait a minute, Yehoshua is just leading a nation in and they're just going to kick out all these people. I mean, how does that work? Right? I mean, everybody's going bananas about what's happening in Israel today because of the election. And we have an election here in our country today. So lots of excitement all over the place. But, we kind of like forget about history. Hashem gave to Abraham, and when it said, you walk the land, the Arkala Rachma, walk back and forth, up and down. So many, and the Targum Yonasan Ben Azil says that was part of an acquisition. That was Kinyan Chazaka. How do you acquire land? By working land, by walking, by trespassing, by treading over it and showing ownership, not trespassing, but going over it. That's how. So now we're just merely coming back to what had been given. That's what he says, because this is what I had given to what I told Moshe and what I promised the Jewish people, and that's going to be your boundaries. We're going to see more about boundaries as we go on. We're still in the embryonic stages of this entry into the land. Lo yisyatsev ish lefanecha kol yemei chayecha kasher hayisi im Moshe eyeh imach lo arbecha v'lo ezveka. As long as you're there, no one's going to stand up against you. And just as I was with Moshe, I will be with you. I'm not going to release you. I'm not going to forsake you. So there's number one, is again, the seamless transition that Hashem says, I was with Moshe, I was with you. You worry, and that's the anytime you have to take over for someone else. I've been in this position. It's very difficult because, people were used to having things, and you have your own way that you want to do things, and in a leadership position. And people are used to having things done a certain way. Now, sometimes people are more than happy to no longer do things that certain way. That's one situation. But sometimes where something works, and then it was just time for a change for whatever reason, or maybe nobody even predicted such a change, but it just happens. So you have to figure out how do you put your own stamp on things without kind of, ruining what's been built up until now. Very, very tricky situation. So Hashem says to him, don't worry, I got your back. I got you covered. No one's going to give you problems. Just like I had Moshe's back, I have your back. Okay? Chazak ve'emat, ki ata tanchil as ha'am hazeh es haaretz asher nishbati la'avosam l'seis lahem. Be strong and courageous, because it's you who's going to cause this people to inherit the land that I have sworn to their fathers to give them. Rak chazak ve'ematz ma'od lishmor la'asos k'chol ha'torah asher tzivicha Moshe avdi al tasim mimeni yamid ismol lema'an taskil b'chol asher teilech. Just be very strong and courageous. You have to observe. You have to do according to the entire Torah. Again, that Moshe avdi, Moshe my servant, commanded, don't deviate right or left. Why? So that you could succeed wherever you're going to be going. Lo yamush sefer haTorah zeh mipicha. Don't lose sight of the Torah, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Don't forget the principles of why we do what we do. It's all based on the Torah. V'hagisa b'yom v'layla. This is the famous phrase that we have. Usually when, here, you see. Every kid that goes to the olive wood factory in Israel. You ever been to the olive wood factory?
Yeah.
No? Don't you say no?
I'm not saying.
What?
Maybe.
What do you? It's not a big secret. It's not like,
remember.
Decades ago.
yeah, like you go to,
Yeah.
of course you go to Mei Sharim. You walk down those steps that you like think you're going to die just walking down those steps, hitting your head or slipping or something, and you get a stender, you get a pen, you get a camel, whatever it is, and they write whatever you want. But probably the number one ticket item is the stender, the table stender, like that, and then you write on it this pasuk, v'higisa bo yom v'layla, and you should learn Torah day and night.
Have a camel.
Does your camel say v'higisa bo yom v'layla? No. Okay. Anyway, so that's the hot ticket item, is the table stender. But it's this pasuk right here. You have to be involved in Torah. You have to learn Torah day and night. And from this, the Gemara and Menachos discusses what exactly is the minimum versus the maximum sort of obligation of Torah study. If I would ask you, how much Torah does somebody have to learn every day? We can get halachic. There's not a lot of halachic material necessarily in Navi, so we got to get halachic a little bit. How much Torah does one have to study every day? It says you have to study the day and night. When you wake up and when you go to sleep.
That's smart. 4 hours.
4 hours. 4 hours.
It varies. from person to
4
person.
hours.
It depends on the person.
It varies.
So you should know that any question that I ever ask, if it's halachic, the answer is always the same. And the answer is always it depends. If you say that, I promise you pretty much 100% of the time, you're going to be safe with anything I ask. Okay. So, how much kugel do you have to have on Shabbos? Depends.
Depends on the scholar.
Oh, there you go.
Mhm.
So let's put it, what's the minimum? I mean, there has to be a minimum if the mitzvah applies to everybody, there has to be a minimum. So maybe you have to take sort of this assessment test. Like when you're in first grade, you have these reading groups, like how many words you read a minute, and so you're in the gray group and you're in the orange group, and so if you're in like the 4 hour a day group, okay, for you we expect 4 hours a day out of you. For you, 4 minutes. So the Gemara says something interesting. The Gemara says that it could be that the very minimum for everybody is just saying Kriya Shema. I know. He said, and then you said 4 hours. So you gave like the minimal and the maximal, and there are some that say, and the other opinion of the Gemara say that it's like as much as possible, like you can't do anything else. Well, 24 hours, right? Because it's Yom Ha'Valayla, it's a day. So yeah, I would imagine. But this is an interesting halachic conversation about how much one has to learn. Anyway, a lot of it comes from this pasuk. So why? Why do you have to learn? So that you should know how to do things. There's two reasons. Why do we learn Torah? Is another basic question. Why do we learn Torah? Why are we here right now and not, polling outside Robert Harp Drive? Why? Why are we here now learning Torah?
Continuing the heritage of our people.
Continuing the heritage of our people.
To
I
be
like
better
that.
people.
To be better people.
You don't want
We're
to.
commanded.
It's the foundation of our identity.
Foundation of our identity. We're commanded to. That's always, you're always safe with that, by the way, because I told you so, right? Let me ask you something. When you light candles Friday night,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Right? How many candles do you light Friday night?
You don't want to know.
It depends.
Man, you're so secretive. You're like,
Nine,
you're
nine.
okay. Can I have 9? That's very nice.
Me too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What are the
We
other
have
Because I
different
like
reasons
for
for it.
everyone in my family.
Right.
What are the other 4 for?
Oh, 4. Well, because I have my grandmother's. Really? We're doing this?
Yeah, we're
Okay,
doing this.
so I
You
have-
missed 4 months. There's no way. I'm like, that's it.
So my grandmother's lifer has 3,
Okay.
and then I have 3 for my daughters.
Okay.
And then my kids made 3,
That's nice. I like
So-
that. Okay.
like 2, 3.
So my mother has like a towering inferno going on because she lights for every child and spouse and grandchild, and I'm sure the new great grandchild is probably gonna get like 5 candles of his own. By the way, I could say it, but the chance of that kid being named after my father is probably like, I'm at a big fat 0. We're fine with it because he's like a full-on Yemenite kid. My niece's husband does not speak a word of English. Hardcore Yemenite. They're probably gonna do the bris in like 5 PM or something, or whatever sunset is over there, and that's how they do it. Anyway, and how do you, when you light candles, what do? You light it first. You say the bracha first. What do you do? How do you do that? It's not a test. I'm just
There's no
asking you.
wrong
I'm just.
answer.
I mean, there is one answer, but there.
I like them, and then I say the prayer.
You light them. Do you do the like the wavy schmavy thing? Do you do that?
I've never really understood it. But it's-
Stop.
I bring Shabbos in first.
Yeah, but I've heard that that's like not real. I don't know if that's true or not.
Oh, it's real.
I mean, is it, but it's founded on, what is it?
So I'm obviously getting at something here. I don't just like, it's not a minhag.
But
It's not a minhag. It
something
is
that
not a
comes
minhag
from something-
because normally speaking, when we have a mitzvah and we want to
Yes.
perform the mitzvah, we make a bracha before we do the mitzvah.
Right.
So we should make the bracha before we light the candles.
But
There's
then
a
we
little
light the
problem.
candle.
What? Exactly. How do we light the candle? If you make the bracha, you accept Shabbos.
Right.
How do you light the candles? So we light the candles, we cover our eyes and make the bracha. Oh, look, candles. That's to accommodate that little bit of an issue of what's called over lasiyasa. Okay. How do I know that? And don't say because I'm the rabbi. How do I know that? Because we read the Gemara in Brachas, the Gemara Pesachim, and Gemara in other places. We know how to do that because we study Torah. We study Torah so that we know what to do. That's what he says here in this pasuk. Lama'an tishmor la'asos. So you could safeguard and also la'asos. You can also perform the mitzvah. So one reason why we study Torah is that we know what to do. How do you know what bracha to make on an apple? Like this coffee here. What is this? Is it flavored? Is it? What do you have in there? Splenda? What do you got in there?
No.
What is it?
Purist.
Black?
No, no.
Milk. Okay. Sugar? Anything? Nothing.
No.
Just milk and black coffee. Okay. Milk.
Organic,
A little organic milk.
organic milk and coffee.
I don't know what organic milk means, but okay. It's just a reason they can charge you more money. So what bracha did you make on that? How'd you know that?
That little book.
Okay, so because you learn that's the bracha that you make on coffee,
Bracha be-
right? You know, an interesting halacha question is: do you make a bracha achrona on coffee? Do you make barei nefashos on coffee? Brachas be people.
Why wouldn't you?
The reason why you wouldn't, and it's most likely that you actually do not, says the halacha, because you don't drink it in one shot. Since you nurse the coffee over a long period of time, right? Come on, you're not gonna get back in your car later, you're like, oh, this is ready. It's like already freezing cold. I can't drink it anymore. So people have these like coffee warmer cups that keeps it warm, whatever it is. But coffee is drunk over a period of time, so therefore we don't make a bracha achrona according to the halacha. But we know this because we study halacha, lishmar lasos. There's another reason why we study Torah. We say lilmod lasos or lilmod lalamei, correct, to teach, so that we could teach. Because how do our kids know? How do our grandkids know what to do? Because we know what to do, we teach them. We have to learn so that we're able to instruct and give them lessons. So that's what he says here. Again, they haven't even stepped foot in Eretz Yisrael. And he's telling them, by the way, don't forget about the Torah. Torah is there so that we can learn and we can know, and also so that we can instruct others. Yes, you can.
Figure it out. On Yom Tov, is it like for Shabbos, we like cover our eyes because
Right.
like that whole thing. But on Yom Tov, do you say the bracha first and then like, because you can do that? I always get confused about what to do.
You can. A lot of people just do the same so that they don't get confused. We
But
call
are
a
you
low
supposed to
plug.
do different?
They
Because in
don't
theory, it's
wave.
better to make the bracha first and then do the action, so.
Probably.
You don't wait.
No, we don't wave. You don't need to
you
wave.
cover your eyes.
You're not
Yeah.
supposed to wait. You're not supposed to wait, but I always do. My mom always tells me, you're not supposed to. And I'm like, but I do.
Yeah, that's it's like not the worst thing in the world. They're like, after 120, like what he went for. Yeah, I waved at the end of candles, like that. So like that. So I ripped off the tag on the mattress, so
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I
right.
used to be so frightened of the top, so I'm sick all day, and I'm reading it. How are they gonna know if I rip it?
I love that. Yeah. They know this is a secret task force. Anyway, so and he says because if you observe and you do all that's written, then tatzliach es darkecha v'as taskil. You're going to be successful if you do the Torah. Hello, tzivisicha chazak ve'matz al tarot al techaski mechasham lekecha b'chol asher telech. So the first 10 pesukim he finishes, first 9 pesukim. Man, I commend you. Be strong and courageous. Don't fear. Don't lose your resolve, because Hashem is with you wherever you go. So, what jumps out? What jumps out from these first 9 pesukim? If I asked you to, can you give me a theme for these 9 pesukim, or give me a phrase for these 9 pesukim? What jumps out?
I want to say that Hashem is promising that we won't lose the land, but we do.
Well, they haven't gotten there yet, so they're not going to lose. He's like, first I'm going to give it to you.
Okay.
But I'm asking, like, from a thematic or a literary point of view, what jumps out?
Like a pep talk.
Yeah, but give me words. Give me like what
Reassurance.
words
Hashem
in the text.
reassuring you.
Oh man,
Yeah.
we don't like it. Vivian.
Hashem Mishpati.
Commandments. Tziviti.
Okay.
That
How
Hashem keeps saying, I'll be with you.
Yeah.
did you do these things?
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else jump out?
It depends.
Oh, very good. You're a quick learner. There's a phrase that occurs 3 times here.
That's,
Chazak v'ematz, correct. Chazak v'ematz. What does chazak v'ematz mean?
Strong and courageous.
Right. In Sephardic tradition, when you say, then let's say Yeshakayach, I hope everybody will sign up for the TEED event on December 4th to support the Joseph Kushner Hebrew High School, where we'll be hosting Modi. Modi has this unbelievable bit.
Oh, this is.
It's funny every time when he does the difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim getting an Aliyah. and the Sfardim, they're going like, so we say shkayech, which ironically comes from the end of the Chumash, because the Rashi tells us, the very last Rashi in Chumash, that he says all the great things that Moshe did, and he says because he broke the luchos, and it says yiyasher kochacha asher shibarta, yiyasher kochacha, may your strength be ever straightened. Yiyasher kochacha became yasher koach, which became yashkoyach, which became shkoyach, which became, so the evolution of that. In Sephardic shul, if you went to a Sephardic shul and somebody got an aliyah and you said shkoach, yashkoyach, shkoyach, they'd throw you out. You say what? You say chazak baruch, strength and blessing, and the answer is always chazak ve'ematz. Chazak baruch, chazak ve'ematz. Okay, so chazak ve'ematz 3 times. So Rashi points out here, it occurs in pasuk vav, it occurs in pasuk zayin and pasuk text. So Rashi in pasuk vav says chazak ve'ematz b'derech eretz, be strength and fortified b'derech eretz, but literally meaning in the land. In pasuk zayin, Rashi says chazak ve'ematz b'torah, and in pasuk text, Rashi says chazak ve'ematz b'milchama. So you have the land, you have Torah, and you have milchama. As if to say, we have 3 requirements, and perhaps there are 3 components that we need for success. Is that you have to have success in understanding, acclimating to a new place. You have to have success in Torah, and you're also going to have success in battle, Yehoshua. And I'm giving you the imprimatur to hopefully take on those 3 legs of this challenge, and to do so. So now, when we see a phrase like this 3 times in the span of 4 pesukim, so then you're going to kind of like scratch your head, and we do this all the time when we look at biblical allusions with an A. Where else do we see this phrase? Okay. So I'm gonna fill that in for you. That it appears only 14 times in Tanakh. 7 of the times are actually here with Yehoshua. So it's got to be some sort of a big phrase. I'll share with you some of the other pesukim. If you want to write down the sources and look it up, you can. But in Devarim, it's found in 2 places in the same chapter, in 31:7 and 31:23. That's Lamed Aleph Zayin, Lamed Aleph Chaf Gimel. The pasuk says as follows: Vayikra Moshe Yehoshua vayomer elav la'inei kol Yisrael chazak ve'ematz ki ata tavo es am hazeh el haaretz asher nishba Hashem la'avosam v'seis lehem ata tanchilan osam. Moshe calls Yehoshua, and he says in front of everyone, what did Moshe say to Yehoshua? Chazak ve'ematz. Why? Because in other words, Moshe himself was paving the way for smooth transition for the people's sake and for Yehoshua's sake. Because Yehoshua, nobody can ever say there was no challenge of succession. No one, he didn't mean you. Well, who says you're supposed to take over? Hashem said it. Moshe said it. All the people saw it, and he used that phrase "chazak ve'ematz." Moshe says to him, "Because you're going to bring the nation into the land that Hashem promised them, and you're going to help them inherit it." And later on in that chapter, it says, "Vayitzav es Yehoshua ben Nun, vayomer chazak ve'ematz ki ata tavi es bnei Yisrael el haaretz asher nishbati lehem v'anochi ayeh imach." Hashem, then he commanded Yehoshua, and he said again, Chazak ve'ematz. So again, this phrase of continuity, but having to do with your job to settle them in the land of Israel. We find it by David HaMelech later. Also, if you want to look it up, it's in Divrei Hayamim Aleph. There's 2 Divrei Hayamim. So the Divrei Hayamim 1, chapter 62, verse 13, regarding David HaMelech and his succession. Az tatzlich im tishmor la'asos es hachukim ve'es hamashpetim asher tziva Hashem es Moshe al Yisrael chazak ve'ematz al tira ve'al techas. We find it again in Divrei Hayamim in 28:20 that Vayomer David l'Shlomo beno. David says to his son King Solomon. David had a few sons, but he said to King Solomon, the one who took over, Chazak ve'ematz va'aseh al tira ve'al techas. The same phrases. Don't fear. Don't despair. You're going to be, just do what I tell you. Why? Ki Hashem Elokim Elokei imecha Elohai imach. Hashem will never forsake you. Hashem is always with you until you finish building this Beis HaMikdash. Okay? By the way, same words. Lo yarpecha, lo yazveka, al tira, al techas. The same thing about giving a charge to someone to say, you can do it. You have challenges ahead of you. You have many tasks that you need to accomplish, but you can do it. Okay. So if we use the word, we say the word chazak. Okay, there's a word that we use often in Jewish vernacular when somebody's feeling down. Okay, and Merit has no appointments to help him. Right. So what do you do? What do you do if something like your friend versus like in a bad way? Right. So what do you do? I keep picking on you.
I'm not answering.
You're not. This is it. She thinks this is like the eulogy test. I'm just not going to do it. Okay. You know what? When that happens, I just pick on you more. When somebody's having what do you do?
You
Try to cheer
encourage
them up.
them.
You guard them,
You
right?
encourage them.
You call them up, send them a note. Come on, whatever. Let's go for coffee. You know what they call that? They call somebody chizuk.
Mm.
Chizuk. You know, have all these daily learning things. Oh, daily chizuk, or like there's no shortage of ways that you could be inspired on a daily basis to learn and to grow and to listen. Aside from the stuff that I put out. No, my wife actually sent that. I don't know if you saw. She sent that to the women's group. The list of like her favorite podcasts or things to listen to just for daily learning. It's really, really quite impressive, the list that she put together. So Moshe, he needs chizuk. He needs chizuk. He gets chizuk from Moshe Rabbeinu, his mentor. He gets strength. He gets inspiration from his boss, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he gets strength from the people, from Klal Yisrael, because they are buying into this. Not that it's a big sell, I'm saying, but they are also part of the seamless transition because they're not saying, "Oh, where's Moshe? We want," because we've seen that in the past. It's a second that Moshe does something they don't like or something that they're like, "Oh, let's go back to Egypt." No, those days are gone. Those days are over. Now it says, okay, Moshe's gone. Yehoshua, we look to you. So he gets strength from those three and almost speaks to those three missions of land, Israel, and Torah. Okay. So and why do you say to somebody, be strong and fortified? Because you're going to need it. Be careful out there. That's how I used to start every episode of Hill Street Blues. Remember that? I bet you're singing the theme song in your head right now.
Yes.
Do, 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 do. Right, I love that show. Right, Sergeant Bilko. Miriam has absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
You're too young.
And if she would
You're too
turn on an
young.
episode of Hill Street Blues, she'd be like, I cannot believe that you had to watch this. You could barely see the screen. It's so pixelated. It's oh my gosh. Okay. But these are the classics. This is the Bochco classics. Okay. And the way they ended every episode, we said, let's do it to them before they do it to us. Be careful out there. Why do you say to somebody, be careful out there? Because they need to be careful. Right? Because it's dangerous. So Hashem's not sugarcoating it. He's saying chazak v'mat because you have a lot that you're going to face. There's a lot that you're going up to it. Okay. And not only that, perhaps what's the biggest obstacle that Yehoshua is going to face? From him, professionally speaking.
Military
Rebellion.
just conquer the land.
He has to conquer the land, but really God does it. But so that's all part of a larger what you said, rebellion. That's all part of what? It's all part of the same challenge. Same challenge.
Replacing Moshe.
Yes. Right. That's my way of being enthusiastic. Yes. You have no idea how happy I am that you're here today. Like you really have no. He has to like. You can imagine, like so for instance, lahavdil, but not so much. So my Rebbe lives in Israel now. So now I'm going to be married. I'm in my 26th year in the rabbinate. So 26 years ago, my Rebbe, my Rosh Yeshiva, he left the yeshiva and he made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. He had a shul at yeshiva, Rabbi Wein, in Sefer, New York, which is basically known as Monsey. Yeah, one quick view, right? But when he left, so his shul called Beis Torah in Monsey, and probably at Hayom Hazeh till today, it's called Rabbi Wein's shul. So could you imagine being like, where are you the rabbi? What's your name? Rabbi, Schwartz. Where do you work? I work in Rabbi Wein's shul. Right. So can you imagine like constantly living in the shadow of someone else who did great and every, well, Rabbi Wein did it this way. And so we hear that all the time. Oh, I did it this way, did it this way. And you know that in certain synagogues where the rabbi is sort of like the driving force behind everything and is the character that kind of defines the nature of every synagogue, it's a very hard position to be in when you're after that person. Okay, well, we always did it this way, we always had it that way, you know. And some handle it better than others. And by the way, some senior rabbis who have retired or have emeritized, they also some handle it better than others. It's not always the case, because I want to break this. I want to give you a little secret here, but rabbis have egos. I don't know if you know this. They do. They really, really do. And as much as they know it's time to retire and this and that, they have a hard time watching somebody else sitting in their chair. They really, really do. And I get it. I totally get it. Okay. It's hard. It's very hard. So imagine if, I don't know what you're talking about. Imagine if Moshe Rabbeinu was with him. And remember, Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Va'eschanan, he said, let me go in as a civilian. Imagine if he said, all right, you can go in as a civilian. Can you imagine how Yehoshua's job would have been? So someone would be, oh, that's the best thing in the world. I have constant counsel. I can always ask Moshe Rabbeinu. We know the relationship was tight and solid, but at certain times, you know, they're going to go to Yehoshua and for the leadership, but other people go straight to Moshe. Moshe will be like, yeah, no, I'm retired. Go talk to him. Go talk to him. So it's a very hard. So it's in some ways it's better that Moshe is not there, perhaps, but it's also the biggest, most daunting task probably for Yehoshua is saying, how can I be Mimalei Makom? How can I fill the shoes of Moshe Rabbeinu? So now so if we go back to the text, Hashem is assuring him in these first 10 Pesukim that what's happening is that you will be in charge. We're going to give you strength. You need 3 areas to concentrate on. Hashem says, I will not forsake you. That's got to be very reassuring. If God himself, the Melech Malchei Malachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the boss of bosses, the boss is saying, I got you. He says, I got you? Okay. Now, that doesn't give you cause for hubris or for overconfidence, but it certainly is confidence inspiring and confidence building. Okay. So now, what's going to happen? We continue we continue through some of the text. Okay, Pasuk Yud, verse 10. Vayitzav Yehoshua shotrei ha'am le'mor. So Yehoshua doesn't waste time. God said, "Kum, get up and go." So what does he do? He gets up and he goes. He's vayitzav. He's good. Now I have to organize. Now we know Yehoshua is a military man, as we saw last time. Certainly in the war of Amalek, he has military expertise. He knows how to organize. He knows how to delegate. It's also a very, we talk about leadership. Rabbi Sachs, whose yahrzeit is coming up. Rabbi Sachs, one of his great lines of many, 8 million great lines, was that great leaders create other leaders. Not everybody's good at that. Some people kind of like have a hard time. Again, it's part of the same sort of ego, not letting go. It's hard. Trust me, I know it's hard. You want to do everything yourself, but you have to be able to you have to empower other people to do things as well. So he gets up and he delegates Shotrei ha'am le'mor to the officers. Ivru b'kerev ha'machaneh v'tzavu es ha'am le'mor hachina lechem tzeda ki ba'od 3 yamim atem ovrim es yarden hazeh levo l'reshes es aretz asher shem lekechem l'sem lechem l'rishta. He ordered, like here it says, the marshals of the people, the police, go around the camp, ivru b'kerev ha'machaneh, and command everyone and say, prepare provisions. Why? Because in 3 days we're crossing the Yarden to go and inherit the land that Hashem, your God, said he's going to give you to inherit. Now, I'm just reminded of something now as I'm reading this. And again, we always have to be sensitive to textual similarities. I have to see if it's exactly the same. If we look in the story of the Ched HaEgel, and when they came into the camp, Moshe comes and he smashes the tablets. Yehoshua is with him, by the way, which we saw last time. And he speaks to Aaron. He's like, Aaron, I leave for 5 minutes. Like, what happened? Okay. You'd be amazed what can happen in a few minutes. So he says, oh, this is what Hashem, he says, Simu ish charbali recho. He says, everyone should get a sword. And then it says, Ivru vashuvu mishar lashar b'machaneh. Ivru, his is Ivru vashuvu. This is Ivru b'kerva machaneh. But this also is like a passing through the camp. There was a passing through the camp with a sword to say, whoever was involved in this terrible plague is going to get it. Here, this is Ivru vashuvu. This is more of preparation. Okay. And what I want to focus on just while we have a few minutes left here is because and I think the key here is ba'od shloshes yamim. In another 3 days, we're going. Now we're going to actually, I'm not going to have time to get it to today, but it's actually because this is one of the Pesukim that teaches us, and we figure out, the Gemara does, exactly to know when Moshe Rabbeinu's Yortzeit is. Right? Because Moshe Rabbeinu died on Zion Adar. We only know that because it says that they went into the land of Israel on the 10th of Nisan, which ironically is the day that they left Egypt. They go on the Shabbos HaGadol. They go on the 10th of Nisan, count back 30 days of mourning and 3 days of preparation. That gives you Zion Adar. That's what the Gemara says. That's how we know that, okay? But when I say to you 3 days, what comes to mind? I'll give you 5 possible cracks at it. 4 of which
3 days for getting the Torah.
Oh, excellent. Okay, very good, Gail. So it says on Shmos, chapter 20, verse 11, prepare yourselves, because in 3 days Hashem's going to give the Torah. Very good, Gail.
That's mine. So it's not that bad.
Okay, right. The Shloshis Magdala. What else? One may or may not be in this week's parsha.
3 days travel, like from wherever Avram lives. I forget yet.
Correct. 3 days. Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avram ezeinav vayaris hamakom re'achok. He went and he saw the place from afar.
Interesting.
That's what he says. So people think that the people who live in Neve Daniel think that their lookup, that's the place, because you could see from there. Okay, I kind of love that. The other one is probably well known. One is lesser known. This is when Yosef is in prison and he's waiting to find out his fate. It says it's in chapter 40, verse 20 in Bereshis. Memcha. Vahi bayom hashlishi yom huledet, says Paro. Vayas mishel l'chol avadav. Vayises rosh sar mashkim v'rosh sarfim b'dach avadav. On the 3rd day, Yosef is in prison. On the 3rd day, that's when the whole thing with the interpretation of the dreams. And then the 4th one, which is biblical, very prescient, of course, with Esther.
Fast.
Right.
fasting.
Right. It's in chapter 5, verse 1. Vahi bayom hashlishi. On the 3rd day, what happened? She put on malchus and she went. Remember, she said she was gaunt and she was fainting. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. She looked like a miskite, but she went anyway. And the king somehow like, oh yeah, you look good, right? You know the worst time to like schmooze with people is like right before Ne'ilah and Yom Kippur. People are like dying. They're like, yeah, don't talk to me. Like I can't look at another human being right now. Okay, because then I got to go home. I got to figure out like where the bagels are, and I got to cut it, and I got to. Okay, so she goes. And the fifth one, which is, I people hate when you say it, but it's true. It's probably a story that never happened, but it really brings home this point. Has to do with Rosh Hashanah and Kippur also. My shul growing up, they used to read the story in English, the story of Rabbi Amnon. You know the story of Amnon? It's in every machzor in the world.
Oh, when he.
From mine,
his
his car, his leg, yeah, right. And he said, and because they
Because he went,
worse.
he asked for 3 days to.
correct, he asked for 3 days to consider the decision, and he came back and he felt so bad that he even thought of it. I'm fairly certain that never happened.
I hope so.
Okay, because it's just there's so many, like, as my kids would say, are plot holes. But the scholars, people have looked into this in great detail. How it crept into our liturgy. The Nisan Tokov, I understand, but the story and Art Scroll and Birnbaum, it's all there. It's like so there. I remember the guy used to read that story out loud in shul, right? It's supposed to inspire. I don't know, pressing. I don't know. I would never do that. not these days. So what's 3 days? So in those instances, 3 days is like your life is hanging in the balance. Like you need real introspection. You need reflection. Rav Amnon, I need 3 days to think about it. Esther, I have 3 days of fasting. I'm going to figure out what to do. Yosef, his life hangs in the balance. Abraham, 3 days. Hashem's telling me, you know what? I got to go. And, when we get there, I finally get there. And can you imagine what those 3 days were like? Getting from that point to the Akedah, and the Torah records virtually no conversation between the two of them. What about 3 days to get to Torah? Imagine what was going on. So here 3 so 3 days isn't always like worry. It isn't always kind of filled with anxiety. But here I would say 3 days is very important because he's saying, look, before you go in, like take a minute and look where we came from. Like think about, we were slaves in Egypt. And then we finally made it 40 years in the desert. Here we are, we're at the end. We're on the precipice of the promise that Hashem made to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the parashas we're reading right now, right? You can imagine that this is their Lech Lecha moment. Hashem says to Avram, Lech Lecha, go, and he goes into the land of Canaan, and he crosses over a river, and he crosses over through Mesopotamia, and he finally gets to the land of Israel. Oh, look what we have, this great future, only to leave a few minutes later, but to come back. But this is our Lech Lecha moment. So for our Lech Lecha, before you could just go in, you know what you got to do? Think about how far you came. Think about all of our collective experience. Think about what we have been through. Think about the journey, because if you understand where you've come from, then perhaps you'll have a better appreciation of where it is that you're going. So these first 10 Pesukim are just trying to encapsulate, first of all, the seamless leadership transition. Hashem saying, just as I'm with Moshe, I'm with you. Laying out for Yehoshua the challenges that are ahead. Torah, land, battle, whatever it might be, but also for the people understanding this chazak ve'amat and this 3 days contemplation, you have to understand and internalize why this is so important. Just think about it. The promise is coming true. I can only imagine, I've never had this feeling, but I can only imagine that for people who spent their whole lives longing for Eretz Yisrael, and they were through the horrors in Europe, and they finally made it there, and the feeling they must have had to land on the shores safely of Israel in 1945 and 1946, and some in 1948, only to have a rifle thrust in their hands, and then they died in battle a short time afterwards. Now their lives have a tremendous amount of meaning. That's something. There's a section in Har Herzl, in the cemetery, in the military cemetery in Jerusalem, where they have people who came, they survived Europe, and they came, and they were the last surviving members of their families who died in the War of Independence. It's an unbelievably powerful thing. You can imagine that. Like, you lost everything just to die for Israel. By the way, what a Kiddush Hashem. That's the way we look at it. But can you imagine the feeling, the longing that they had to go to Eretz Yisrael, to these survivor families, to have their grandkids bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs in Israel. Like they little kids, it was a pipe dream. And now they're part of it. So Yehoshua is telling the people, okay, that's why he says and you see the transition. He takes control. He hears the words, he hears the charge by Yitzav Yehoshua. All right, you do this, everybody go back and forth. This is what's happening, and we're going to appreciate this. Now we're going to see when we go forward, he's going to give very concrete instructions. But again, just the beginning of the book, you could see that it is really just a continuation of the book of Devarim, even though there's a big major break, and one is Torah and one is Navi, et cetera, but Devarim doesn't end at the end. Devarim seamlessly flows right into Sefer Yehoshua, and here we have it now, a little bit of business. So when we learn the text here, be sensitive to the words that are used, be sensitive to the phrases that are used. Like, so I just to me occurred Ivri v'shuvu, but things like chazak ve'amat, you're going to see it a few more times, and this constant message and how that applies to us today. So everybody remember to go and vote. I did like 6 times already, so I'm good. I feel like I was in Chicago, but no, I actually voted on Sunday. It was really the